Good evening, and thank you all for joining us for our first edition of the ALC Fireside Chat. As we're allowing individuals into the room, we're just going to give it one moment, but we're going to start with opening remarks by AMAX Board Chair, Mr. Ricky Smith. Ricky?
Good evening, everyone. I am so excited to be here with this wonderful group of women. I think you will be as amazed at the end of this session as I am already. So just for some welcome remarks on behalf of the Airport Minority Advisory Council's Board of Directors and the national office led by Ebony Winbush. About a year or so ago, we formed a group called the Airport Leadership Collective, which is a group of about 35 or so minority airport CEOs and commissioners, past and present. And that group took upon itself to bring a focus to the lack of women airport CEOs. We happen to have some amazing women CEOs. We have 4 of them on this panel. We do not have enough, and I think you'll hear that from them, but we thought it would be a great idea to profile them and to hear their perspective. And so you're in for an amazing session. These are some of the most phenomenal women I've ever met. And I think you will agree once you hear that message. So again, welcome to this Fireside Chat brought to you by the Airport Minority Advisory Council's Airport Leadership Collective. With that, I will turn it over to another amazing woman who helped spearhead the ALC, and that is Karen Ellis out of San Antonio. Karen?
Thank you, Ricky. Good afternoon and good evening to those who are in different time zones, and welcome to our first quarterly Fireside Chat. I too, like Ricky, am so excited about this because we have some phenomenal women that will be providing some feedback from their perspective. We have 2 current airport CEOs and we have 2 former airport CEOs, and they are here to share their stories. This is mainly just a conversation that we're going to have with you and them. We have the chat will be open. We have chat monitors that will be taking your questions. We ask that you stay on mute if at all possible. I know sometimes it gets exciting and people are really ready to jump in, but for the sake of everybody being able to hear everything, please put your questions in the chat. And even if we don't get to them, the event is being recorded, and so that the questions will be shared with the panelists so that they can get back with you at another time. I'm just so excited about this. So without further ado, let's get started. So I'm not going to introduce each of the panelists. I'm going to let them give you a little bit about their background while we're going through our icebreaker. And our icebreaker is going to be, my question is, did you always want to be an airport director? And if so, or if not, what path led you to become an airport director? And so I will start with Angela Gittens on that question.
Thank you, Karen. It's a delight to be here. And no, I did not start out wanting to be an airport director. I didn't know such a thing existed. I didn't know that airports were managed. I just assumed that airlines ran the airports, and of course, airlines still seem to think that sometimes. I was in the hospital field, and I had a reputation as a change manager. And so a colleague who had gone to the airport, and I didn't even know the airport was part of city government. I worked for the city hospital and didn't know the airport was a city department. And a colleague of mine called me one day when had the day off, and said they were looking for a new head of business and finance, and could he put my name in the hat? And first I thought, well, no, why would I want to go from the hospital to the airport? And then I remembered what an executive recruiter had once told me, and that was, never turn down a job you haven't been offered. So I said, yeah, sure. So anyway, I got the job as Deputy Director for Business and Finance. Ultimately, the Atlanta job came open, in which I had no interest because it was full of scandals and people were going to jail, including the then director. And my boss who had hired me into the airport, pushed me to say, okay, I'll be a candidate. And ultimately, I got that job. Required a contract, which it looked like I wasn't going to get because they had a policy against contracts, but I wasn't about to go when I didn't know what the extent of the corruption was and where it was. I wasn't about to go without a contract. So anyway, the city council wound up agreeing to a contract and I became a CEO.
Now, Angela, before we go to the next wonderful speaker, what was the last position that you held in the aviation industry before retiring?
So I was the head of ACI World, which is the entity, the part of ACI. ACI has World and 5 regions, and World interacts with the regulators at the global level, including in particularly the International Civil Aviation Organization, and runs programs for all airports in the world, like the ASQ, the Airport Service Quality, the APEX, the Airport Excellence in Safety and Security and Environment. So I wound up going all over the world, dealing with folks of every culture. Never went to Russia, which now I'm glad I didn't. But it was a fascinating job. And that too, I got a call actually from Miguel Southwell, who said they were looking for a new director and he wanted me to apply. And at first I said, well, I don't know about that. And he insisted, as you know, Miguel can do. And so I let myself be a candidate and ultimately got that job. And
Awesome.
it was a wonderful 12 years of,
Wow.
really interacting with all kinds of airports and all kinds of people all over the world.
Awesome. Awesome. Thella, I'll let you go next. Please tell us about your journey.
Good evening, and thank you for inviting me, and thanks to all of you for signing in and listening to us today. I actually never even thought about an airport, just as Angela did, and I started my career, well, I had various careers during my early time out of college, but I was at one point working in public administration and worked for a very nice man who really pushed diversity and inclusion in city government. And I left city government and moved out of state. Years later, he went to Dallas-Fort Worth Airport, and long story short, I ran into him one day and he said, when are you gonna come back and work for me? And he told me about what he was doing at the airport at Dallas-Fort Worth and said, you would love it and you could add a lot to our team. So I'm gonna be in touch. And long story short, that's how I ended up in airports. I started as a budget analyst for the Dallas-Fort Worth Airport and actually tried several times to move laterally within the organization because I did find the work fascinating and wanted to learn more, but I actually found it easier to move out than to move across. Mm-hmm. So I actually took a job with the Kansas City airport system, the city, which was run by the city of Kansas City, as the deputy director of the city's 3 airports. And it was in that position actually that my boss kept encouraging me to learn more, to get more involved in the industry. He says, you one day you're going to be an airport director. And I said, no. That's something I want to do. Too much politics, too much this, too much that. I'm enjoying what I'm doing. And then one day a headhunter called me and said they had my name for the job in San Diego. And long story short, I told him I really wasn't interested. I was very busy. I had too many things to do. My boss was busy because he was the head of AAAE that year. And so I had to be in charge while he was gone all that time. And I just couldn't do it. And so the headhunter pretty much told me what Angela said earlier, don't turn down a job you haven't been offered, and made all kinds of concessions to get me out to interviews and into that process, because I really was very busy and not able to leave Kansas City anytime I wanted because of my boss's engagement on the national level. So long story short, I ended up with a job, and that started just an amazing time in San Diego with every kind of issue and problem you could imagine and every kind of opportunity that one could wish for.
Awesome.
Never regretted it.
Thank you. So now, though you've heard from two previous or former airport directors, let's hear from some of those that are still in the industry. We have Gladys Brown, and she's with the Yuma International Airport, and she's been on board for about 7 years. So Gladys, how did you get into the role of being an airport director?
So mine was when I was 18, I wrote down a bunch of goals, and I knew that I would run an organization, but I just didn't really know what it was. So I ended up going to school first for sociology and then transferred, kind of funny. Then I was like, well, I'm just going to pick a different degree. So I went and got my undergraduate in mechanical engineering. Went to a school where you sailed on ships. So I spent every summer abroad working as an engine man on a ship. And so was really fortunate because my dad taught me at a very young age, kind of like a little bit of the politics, but then also a skill set. So I ended up being a pipe fitter in college. So when I graduated, I went into the industry, a huge Fortune 500 company as a consultant at 22, came out of that, became a high school teacher, ended up getting married and pregnant. And then my former, he ended up being in the Marine Corps, and we found ourselves in Yuma. So everybody wonders, like, how did you get to Yuma?
How did you get to Yuma?
Yeah, at all places in the world. And if no one knows where that's at, make California, Arizona, and the country of Mexico touch each other, and there's Yuma. So easy enough. And it does get like 120, but there's air conditioning, so no worries. And so when we got here, I worked for a civil engineering firm. It took me a while because I had a small child, so it was a little bit difficult entering into a new environment. And so with baby in tow, I used to hold my baby at 6 months old and walk into places to try to get a job. And it was really tough. And so I ended up working for a civil firm. That civil firm introduced me. It was one of our clients was the airport. And then when the recession happened, I knew that they were going to have to eventually scale down that company because it was a mom and pop shop. And so I just kind of put my feelers out there. And one of my clients was the airport, and he happened the day prior, the ops director had just resigned, and I just wanted to give me a letter of recommendation. And he said, well, don't just have lunch with me and tell me all about the ideal job you'll have in the world. Like, if you can pick any job, what would it look like? And so just by chance, and then also all my hard work, because he watched me through 2 children after that. So I have 2 more children. And he loved my work ethic. He said, it's easier for me to train an engineer how to airport manage than to try to teach an airport manager how to engineer. And so he brought me on and took the place of all the consultant services that he had. And then I worked in ops, made my way into the deputy position. But he asked me, if you were offered a job here, what would your goal be? And I said, my goal would be, and I know this sounds crazy, but I said, my goal is to retire you. So if you're okay with knowing that's my goal,
I'm coming at you.
Yeah, I want your position and eventually kind of move my way through the industry. Truth be known, he's like, I can see it. And I was like, I want to run big old airports, right? And then I figured out what that happens. Angela kind of pinpointed that. And so I was like, maybe I stay kind of in that small, medium hub. I don't know, but right now I'm at a non-hub. So, but still has commercial air service, and I'm having fun and lots of business development. So I got my way through the industry. So I went, as they say, the dark side over to the airport management side, and I'll never look back. I'll figure something out. I always tell folks, no matter what, like, this is the place to be. And I fell in love. I fell in love with all the moving parts. Truth be known, I also love pavement. I got pavement issues. So I'm always ready to go. So I always tell folks, and I love work culture. So the one thing I like is the ability to influence our environment through just a smile, or figuring out if something's going on. And like on my bad days, I go down, I sit in the terminal and I watch people happy and sad and learn about emotions and how people interact. So it's just neat, beautiful place to be, small or big. Like airports are fascinating to me, general aviation all the way to commercial. So I just found that passion, but I found the passion for people and culture and just what is all involved in it. It's like a beautiful world to me, different from a municipality structure. So I always say we're like our own little system. So that's how I found my way.
And you've been there 7 years?
So I've been the airport director for 7 years. So just like in succession planning, my succession planning didn't work out as well. And so they had to go for a national search when my boss retired, and he did retire kind of overnight. I also entered into the position with 3 active lawsuits, 1 civil suit, 1 suit regarding an incubator disagreement, and then a wrongful eviction for $140 million. So I took on the position, which I tell people, with multiple bullseyes and a lot of politics, but kind of worked through all that over the years. So, but I've been here for 13 at the airport, in Yuma for 18, and just figuring it all out. Still learning all day.
Thank you. Thank you. Cynthia, I'm not going to say that you're the baby of the group, but your tenure has not been as long as others. So tell us about how you made your career, the journey to being the airport director for Long Beach.
Sure. Well, first of all, just thank you to AMAC and to everyone for being here today. I think this is just great in the beginning of just, I hope, some wonderful conversations. And Karen, thank you for facilitating this afternoon. My journey, gosh, you'll hear similar threads a little bit from me, because I came up really no idea about managing an airport or being a director of an airport. It just was not on my radar at all. I went to school, similar with Gladys, as an engineer, a civil engineer though, and was just very much interested in building, constructing, learning as much as I can. And I started my career in the city of Los Angeles, working in the public works department. So working on just park developments, doing solid resources, all kinds of civil engineering things like that. But at the time, after working in public works for about 10 years, I wanted to really go somewhere where they were doing really great construction. Like what was the next place where I could learn as much as I could about building? And so my actual desire, if you will, was to work at a location where you were doing a lot of building. And airport was LAX, Los Angeles World Airports, was the closest facility that was doing amazing construction. And I thought that's where I want to be, because I want to grow my skill set in that area. Had no idea about who really runs an airport and what it looks like. I had no idea at all. But I kid you not, 6 months in of working at the airport at LAX, I'm like, wow, I could stay here for a long time. This feels like home. This feels great. It was a light bulb came on. I had no idea how much fun it would be working at an airport. And so at the time, I was, just the engineer, just really trying to understand everything at an airport, airside, landside term, what is it? What do we need to do? But I came at a time that was 2 weeks right before 9/11. And so when I walked in, when I got to LAWA, and the excitement of all these different projects, and then 9/11 hit, everything shifted and changed, and it was all about safety and security. And so I came in at a time where it was just a big shift in the aviation world, and we all had to kind of learn a different route, a different level of priorities, if you will, for aviation, for the airport itself. But it was an amazing opportunity for someone that like me, who was young and into the industry starting off, because at that point, it was all hands on deck. Everyone jump in, do what you can as we navigate through these difficult waters. Mm-hmm. And for me, it was an opportunity to try and learn and get connected with so many people, because we all had to build basically a new CIP, capital improvement program, based on safety and security. And so just, I'm gonna fast forward, if you will, over time, because really what transitioned me from, doing, construction and project management and opening up the world to other aspects of airports, and the managing side, is I had an individual as well. And so I'm hearing this theme, we all had someone kind of pushing at us and encouraging us. And so I had someone tell me, Cynthia, have you ever thought about this? And it was a planning position at the airport. And it's like, well, I really, no, I didn't really think about that. But I quickly learned that similar of not telling yourself no on things, that, you know what, if you jump into something that, you might, if you stay humble, you might learn something. And it was, for me, just the opening and that I needed to really explore what other skill sets that I might have that I could grow. And it was always fun. It's just trying to learn as much as I can, even while leading others. Even today, I want to continue learning. What could I learn? What could I do to help lead a team or an organization? And so that was just the beginning of someone just kind of prodding me to go into the management side of things. And for me, I'm very much a people person, in the sense of similar to Gladys, as far as I enjoy being a part of a person's journey. So I look at the airports very similar. When I look at all the travelers, the passengers that come in and out of the airport, I'm looking at, gosh, how can I make their journey as pleasant as possible? Because they're coming through for various reasons. There's a number of reasons, but I and our team get to touch that piece of time that they're here. And so for me, just being a people person and wanting to be a part of that was important to me. And so over the times at LAWA, by the time I left there, I was a deputy executive director, and every position there, as I was going up the ladder, it's just a tremendous opportunity. I mean, I really felt very blessed to be able to have that opportunity in front of me and to take it. Yeah. And also recognize that, you know what, there could be other people that could have been in this position, but this opportunity was given to me, and I want to do the best that I can in that role. And so when the director position came up, and it's similar, again, I never did think that I wanted to be a director. But when the position came up and the opportunity came up for here, gosh, I think I had about a dozen folks in my ear at the time saying, you know what, you really need to think about this. And I also happen to live in Long Beach. And for me, I do not regret at all, even though, we've been faced with the pandemic with the majority of my time here, I do not regret at all being in this role, being able to steward such an amazing small hub airport. It's been quite an experience. And so, it's a similar thing. We all kind of didn't plan on being in these seats, but we had great encouragement. I do believe that it does take a tremendous amount of strong staff to do what we do, and it's not a solo job, although there may be days you might feel solo in it, but it's not a solo job. It is a team effort.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, definitely resounding or resonating theme amongst all of you about what your journey was to get where you are and or were. So let me give you a little bit. So now that we've done the icebreaker, let me give the participants a little bit more of the history of how this fireside chat came about. So as Ricky Smith mentioned, the Airport Leadership Collective has, and I see Marshall Taggart's on, he is the chair of the ALC. We have 4 goals, and out of that goals, hey, Marshall, you wave at everybody, okay. We have 4 goals, and under one of those goals, one of the initiatives under one of those goals is to push to effective positive change for women in the industry. And so I've been in the industry for a number of years, and a lot of people, for whatever reason, will talk to me as they're making their journey. And I had someone mention to me that's interested in becoming an airport director say to me, I was going, and I'll share the story with you. I was going to dinner with Cynthia and some other people, some other guys, but that one of my friends said, hey, I would love to go to dinner with you all to be able to pick her brain, because being a female in this industry is different from being a male in this industry. And so I would love to ask her questions on how would you handle this? How do you make your voice known in a room full of men, in a male-dominated environment? How do you say what you have to say without coming off as being angry or argumentative or something like that? And so I started thinking, and Angela helped me kind of flush it out to say, well, why don't we just have a chat on some things that, you know, went well for them, some things that they would tell you, hey, stay away from this because it may not end well with you. And it, ironically enough, on, I believe it was yesterday, the AMAC Emerging Leaders had a back after event where they were just talking. It was just conversations about how do you know when it's enough? How do you know as a woman, how do you know how to get your point across? How do you know how to make decisions? How do you know when it's enough? How do you know when to stop? And so it was a great, great conversation. And Ebony Wimbush is also on. He was the president and CEO of AMAC. And one of the things that resonated with me of what Ebony said, and I don't want to speak for her, but I'll let her jump in, but she said, it's like velvet and steel. You have to know when to be velvet, and you have to know when to be steel. So I thought that was very interesting. But so Angela, I'm going to ask you, when is it that a woman knows it's enough, or it's too much, or how do you know to draw that, when to draw that line?
Well, you know, it's like going to a new school, right? You kind of figure out what the culture is in the place, and then how you fit into that culture. And so you do, and I thought it was great, the velvet versus steel. So sometimes you're fitting, and you want to start by fitting so you get some credibility, and then sometimes you bring out the steel. And so you set the limits on what you're going to tolerate out of these people, because you don't want to be one of the guys, because you're not a guy, you're a woman, and being a woman is a good thing. So on the one hand, you want to kind of learn from them and kind of hear them, and have them be comfortable with you being around. But then you also need to slap them upside the head every so often to make sure that they understand that they can't go but so far, and they need to start learning how to deal with women.
Absolutely.
You know, we're not junior men, we are women on our own. And they, so they need to start learning, how to behave properly and get rid of some of this toxic masculinity that, that happens when they are just with each other.
Mm-hmm.
And where that line is sort of depends on where you are in the organization. So when you're very junior, you may be more limited.
Mm-hmm.
When you get higher up, not only do you have more opportunity, but you have to take that opportunity for the women below you, so they don't have to fight as hard as you have to fight.
Mm-hmm.
And that keeps going. Now, I used to use a lot of humor, just because of my personality, and everyone has to deal with their own personality.
Mm-hmm.
I'm from New York, right? So I'm this wiseacre from New York. So I was still that, So,
yes, you were. And Steve, you're all here, so Steve, you know about that.
So I would just be myself, but in a lot of ways, very calculated, being myself, and and when to do the steel and when to just sit back.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you for sharing that. So let's talk about finding your voice in the workplace. So Thella, how did you find your voice in the workplace? Or any advice that you would give on finding your voice in the workplace?
Well, I agree with a lot of what Angela said about when to be velvet and when to be still. It's the same thing about finding your voice. But early on in my career, one of it wasn't even an airport, it was another working environment. A guy that I had a lot of respect for actually told me in relationship to a comment he made to the mayor of a city that I thought was just so irreverent that he was going to lose his job because he actually worked for the mayor. And he told me, you always have to be willing to speak your mind, and don't ever let any job mean so much to you or pay you so much that you lose the integrity to speak your mind and to say the right things. And that always went with me, that I couldn't let the job or the money or anything about it be so important to me that I couldn't stand for what I believed in. And, you know, sometimes maybe what I believed in wasn't what everybody else believed in. But if it was important, I had to have the courage. And that's often what I told my employees. The most important thing you can have as a leader in any organization is courage. Courage to do the right thing, to say the right thing, to stand up for everyone in your organization when it's the right thing to do. And so that's really years before I even went into airports. I think it's when I began to find my voice. I have to say this, early on in my career in airports, I used my voice with no tact. And I would advise you not to do that. My boss at DFW was in an executive leadership institute through the National Forum for Black Public Administrators. And I went away for a week with that. And I came back and he said, how'd it go? And I said, you know, people got really upset with me. They said that Thella had good ideas, but she just threw them out there. And if she didn't agree with you, she was so mean about the way she said it. And, you know, they were going, I said, and I can't believe they said that about me. And he said, well, just look at the way you talk in staff meeting. And I said, what are you talking about? And he says, well, you know, I won't call any names, but the head of purchasing hasn't spoken to you for 6 months because the last comment you made in the staff meeting with her. And so when he said that, I actually had to begin to step back and look at myself to see how are you expressing yourself? And to take notice of that and begin to learn that even though I might have good ideas, no one was going to listen to them if I threw them out there with a torch on attached to them. And so really finding your voice, I think, takes courage, it takes integrity, but it also takes tact and thinking through things from the perspective of the environment that you're in. And how do you say what you need to say in a way that is going to be heard?
Okay, thank you. I have a lot of questions, but what I want to do is I want to make sure that that there's an opportunity for you, if someone wants to come off mute and ask the panelists a question that of something that you may be dealing with, you're trying to navigate through, you're trying to understand a best practice that they may have used. We have that opportunity for you to do so if you want to come off mute and just say what that is. Rachel, I see you with your hand up. You want to come off mute, please? Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you all for having this. I think this is amazing. You know, I think we're all trying to get to that top, but once you get there, how was like your first 90 days?
Ooh, I can answer that one because I remember, and I'm not gonna lie, I can say this to everybody on here. I did spend a little bit of time in my ops truck crying away from everybody because it was a little bit kind of crazy. So I was a promote from within. So I competed with outside folks that are going to get the position. So I felt extremely, I felt blessed to be chosen. And at the same time, I saw later who the candidates were in that final four. So I felt very special even after that. But I can tell you that I had very good mentors. So I would go away from, I was still at the airport, but I would take a moment without no one's ears available, including our team. And I would go and sit in that car. That first 90 days was tough because one of the four candidates was actually another team member that was a department director. So I noticed that they were acting a certain way. It was, it was challenging. And so what ended up happening is I figured by influence of peers, I asked each one of them to talk to each other about what it appeared to be when they spoke to me. So that way they can say, hey, I don't know if you realize the way you speak to Gladys, like you wouldn't have spoke to another boss that way.
Yeah.
I want to keep in mind too, I was probably the youngest ever hired. And in my recollection, other than maybe a city manager that stepped in or an assistant manager, I was the only female, and my board average age was like 62 years old, all white male at that time. And my staff was predominantly male and white male. And so again, and we kind of have a very high like LDS, like Mormon community and Christian community, but half of the panel were actually were of the Mormon faith, and the person that was competing for the position was actually the president of the stake. So I actually got chosen over the president of the stake. And so it was just a lot of dynamics that went on. So that first 90 days felt real stressful. And then I had advice from a friend of mine that said, hey, you've got a year of observation to understand the culture that was there and know that you can't change anything overnight, but you just need to first make sure everybody's P's and Q's are in order so that you're following what the regulation requires first. So I just focused on what our company, what's the requirement? And then from there with the team, they had to accept, like, I'm your boss. And if you don't like me, you get me fired. Like, it's pretty easy. You don't like who works for you, just don't perform. So I figured, I'm like, you guys love your job. You love what you're doing. So I knew it wasn't that. I think it was just that a little bit of the nonverbal. There was a lot of nonverbal. So we worked through a lot of team building. So I did introduce a few things in those first 90 days that it was different. Like they just weren't used to communicating. The person that was in my seat formerly did have an open door, but was it really open if nobody really can talk to you? So the door is always open, and he always made you feel like you can come in. I didn't have any problem because I was like, I got to get things done. We're going to do this. Worst case scenario, I got to find a new job. So I was like, I'm always approach him. So a little bit different. And then of course, coming into that position, being very young, like for example, one of the team members, I was the same age as actually one of the department directors of his oldest child. So, wow. You know what I mean? So that was always fun, but again, so a little bit of a different dynamic. I was a promote from within. There was another candidate that actually still was gainfully employed with the authority. And then on top of that, I had a shift in that work culture because they already had observed, just kind of observed how I managed and how I led. And they also wanted to test those waters, so again, in a small, intimate staff, it was a little different. Again, my staff too, I can disclose this, is 20 something people. It was like 21. And full disclosure, Cynthia knows this, Thella knows this too. The one thing I have in my advantage, other than, being young, like in high heels, I stand like 6'4". So that's a little bit, like, let's do this. And I'm gonna be honest with you. So case in point with what Angela and Thella said, like I walk shoulder squared, like head up, like no problem. Like I will, if I know it's a crazy medium about to walk into, I find the tallest high heels I've got in the brightest dress. And I just sit there and everyone's like, and whose assistant is here? And I just kind of wait, doop, doop. And then someone's like, no, she's running things. Like we got to get this right. But so that kind of was helpful sometimes in other meetings, but for the team dynamic, I think that was the toughest part, was the promote from within. Yeah. The having another team member that was also in the candidate of the final four, and then also trying to figure out how to approach that without without coming off confrontational. I have very good tact because I spent 2 years in silence as the deputy, not to say it to anybody. My predecessor said, it's like the vice president. You're always there, but you never say anything. So I was like, "What does that mean?" And so I had a moment where I was like, what am I doing here? But now hindsight, I'm like, God, that was such a great observation time that most people don't get. And I got paid to do it. I learned so much and I developed my soft skills even better. So those first 90 days, I'm not gonna lie to anybody, like I'm human. So I did cry in my ops truck, but it was away.
Yeah.
There was no witnesses. So did it really happen? It's
That's
kind of
right. That's right.
in the
In the
forest.
shadows. in
So
the
that's
shadows.
right.
So I saw a couple of other, Cynthia, did you want to respond?
That was great, Gladys. I just wanted to add a few things. My experience was a little bit different in that I came from the outside. And so, but I came in as a director where this airport had, I don't know, maybe 5 different directors in this short period of time before it was like this revolving door of directors. And so when I walked in here, it was a team that I kind of felt that, you know, they didn't have that stability, if you will, of having someone here for a long time. And so that, you know, you kind of behave a little bit differently when you're in that type of situation. And so for me, my first 90 days, I felt like I was interviewing everyone from, I mean, every level as much as possible, every group, every stakeholder, internally and externally. I mean, I met so many people and I wanted to know what was working, what did you try and fix and it didn't happen? What would you say would be something that, you know, you really would like to see Long Beach Airport change? That's roughly my first, you know, kind of 3 questions, and then went on from there. But I felt like I was just interviewing like crazy, and I'm madly doing all these notes because I knew I was coming in with, you know, different people sharing little things in my ear, but I needed to assess it for myself, and I needed to get to know who all the players are, how were decisions really getting made, what was that process like, what was the governance like, you know, the official one and the unofficial one. I mean, those are the kind of things you're just doing massive homework. And then, you know, really kind of after that 90 days, started drafting out what would be my approach, what would be my strategy, and kind of tackling some of the things that rose to the top of things that I knew that this we could hit in the first couple of quarters, and then these other things, this is going to take a longer period of time to have a positive change. So anyway, we all have those experiences.
Yeah, and that homework is because we feel like we have to know more than anybody else in the room, because otherwise we don't get a chance to have a voice, right? I mean, let's just be honest about it. We just have to know twice as much in the room to make sure that, you know, nobody's able to question what we say. So I saw 2 hands, and they're not up now. One was Wendy and one was Bryce. Would you all still like to chime in at this point?
I was just gonna ask, what are some opportunities for someone who's majoring in engineering and technology, and when it comes to working within an airport?
I think me and Cynthia, I know both of us are engineers, and the truth be known, I think all of us would tell you that if you got the right personality, and you're ready to go, like we can train you in just about anything, for real. I mean, that's the way I look at it. So for example, if I know I got an intern that's doing business, if she's got a great smile or he or she has a great smile and a good personality, like I can train them everything else, and they've got that qualification or that drive, then you can do it. I also go into the schools with the STEM and also the continued technology education portions of it. And my biggest advice, especially to engineers or those inside of the technology field, is you need to develop those soft skills, and you need to be able to articulate and really figure out like, what's your niche? What do you enjoy? Because again, the floodgates open. Like this world today, we need every position and every type of person. So whether you're introvert or extrovert, or whether you're still trying to figure out exactly what you love to do, like you can figure it out at an airport. So just the fact that you have the fortitude and the ability to matriculate, you can get after it if you just give it a go. Look at that job description, see it and feel that you can be successful there. Just know that there's some mobility, whether it's laterally or upward, or the ability to stay where you're at and be influential, you have to figure that out. And that's one of the things add on to the former questions and answers is you have to be authentic. I think most of us in our careers, and the reason why we advanced is who we are and why we do what we do. And we also know the fine lines of being assertive and aggressive, because we all have the tendency of being aggressive. But we also understand the difference between the two of being assertive and aggressive, and the combination of them both. So as an engineer, Bryce, and with that technology, you can advance yourself where you need to be. It's just, you need to ask yourself, like, what's my dream? What's my passion? And what do I want to do with it? Because there's every job, any job you want, you can mold it. You can even take a job description and then evolve it and then rename it. Like, I let people name their own jobs here. I'm like, you don't like the word specialist? Well, drop the specialist and figure out what the first part is. Like, I can get the job description together. So again, think about that and then do a little bit of writing, and then you'll find it at an airport for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
I would totally agree with that. And I would add, also learn the rest of the airport, volunteer for the task forces or committees, both within the airport and then, particularly at some of the larger airports where, the airport gets asked to be on AMAC or ACI or some FAA committee, volunteer for it, because then you learn the whole industry. One, you learn the whole airport, and then you learn the whole industry, and your name gets out there. And I think probably for most of us, from what I'm hearing, we only cold applied for one job. And after that, we got asked to apply. We got headhunted. We got recruited. Our names came to the attention of the folks looking for people. And that's what you want.
Thank you. Wendy, I see you're back on. Do you want to ask a question?
Thank you so much. This has
Absolutely.
been absolutely amazing. Thank you very much. I think, when you're in a CADX airport, it's a little bit more difficult to be as agile because it becomes a little bit more specific in areas at times. One of the areas, and this is a little awkward and it's a little bit different than usual, and that is that we're very fortunate to have a lot of senior women leaders, but sometimes the senior leaders are all quite aggressive in where we're trying to go. And it sometimes becomes people not seeing us as being really good leaders because of how we are aggressive at what we do. But people take it as, oh, we've just got a big group of women who are trying to overcome each other or trying to bide for each other's time or energy. And how do you try to kind of overcome that when there's, multiple women and it doesn't look good for others, or others don't take that as looking well? It's really interesting dynamic.
No one ever says that about a group of men.
There you go.
I was gonna say, is others the men?
Right.
There you go.
Great
And
point.
so I think it's a burden that women often carry, but you have to, I think, you have to be strong enough to just be direct with them when you're at. Let me just give you an example. It didn't do with women, it had to do with Blacks. When I became the president of the airport authority, because the airport was separated from the port, a very influential leader called me up when I hired 2 Black men to be vice presidents in that new organization. They called me up and said, Thella, if you want to keep your job here in San Diego, you better stop hiring all of these Black people for these top level jobs, because anyone who's done that in the past hasn't lasted here very long. And, I said, thank you for the advice, and went on about my business. And I think that's what you have to do. You have to understand that as women and as minorities, you are not allowed to have the same clicks and interactions that the privileged classes have had in the past. And so you just really have to acknowledge it and move on with it. I think something that Gladys said earlier about you have to learn the difference between being assertive and being aggressive. And you have to learn when to apply each one of those. And so, you know, when someone offers me a criticism, what I've learned over the years is not to immediately dismiss it, but to look at it to see, is there any truth in it? Is there something in that truth that I need to take and do something with? So if their criticism of your group is, if there's some validity to it, find ways to address that makes it more positive. You know, use some tact, use Angela's humor, find ways to make people listen to you, because you will not be successful if people don't listen to you and people don't respect you and people continue to see you as just some kind of a clique. But I still go back to my original premise that they don't ask that of men.
Thank you so much, Thella.
Okay. So Gladys, I know you have your hand up. Are you going to add to that? And there's Doretha, you had your hand up, but
yeah, so real quick, I want to add with Thella too. So just a real quick example and things that aren't said to a counterpart, right? Our male counterparts. When I became first the airport director, I'm gonna share this. And again, they are no longer on the board. I don't even know if they're alive anymore. But not to say it like that. Bless his heart. So I remember coming in, I know I had to do that real quick. I remember coming into the office and he came off, first of all, he had to get buzzed in. He came in, I remember he came around the corner and he said to me, you sure been busy. And I said, oh man, we're just killing it, right? And he's like, yeah, it doesn't look like you've been at the gym lately. You haven't been able to get to the gym lately? And right then, right? So Thella, you made me think about it. And then I remember saying to him, I said, man, it's real hard. I got the kids after school. I got to run and do something. I was like, but if you don't mind when someone says they see my car at the gym at 10 o'clock, if you'll say, no, absolutely, we support her and her health and her mental health to be at the gym, then I'll go to the gym every day as long as you're okay with me going midday at about 10 o'clock, because I still go to lunch. I got to eat, or if I'm working and eating. But if you're okay with giving me 1 hour of gym time, I'll be more than happy to get in that gym. And he's like, absolutely. And I said, oh, and by the way, I've got other employees in the same situation. So would you be okay if I also offered them gym memberships and the time to go to the gym? I'll give them 45 minutes and then they just got to do 15 minutes and commute. Would you support that as the board member and then be able to see that when I do the line item in the budget under their amenities? And they said, absolutely. And so I just turned it right around. So sometimes like I'm gonna tell everyone full disclosure again, like I am. I know where I'm small doses and large doses for different folks. So when I walk into the room, I kind of know where's my enthusiasm appreciated and where is it like, oh, Jesus, when did she get away from me? And so I kind of gauge that along and then figure it out. But when people make the smart bottom comment or that little comment that they would have never made to somebody else, I just figure out like, how can I twist it around and turn them into my advocate? And then also advocate for the people I work with too. And who I work for. And so that's kind of how I took it. So with Thella, case in point, you do got to wait a second and then be able to be responsive.
So we have about 7 minutes left. I'm going to give you all the floor for one last comment. But before I do, I want to say thank you to everyone for participating today. We will have a second quarter event after the 37th annual Business Diversity Conference, which will be in June in Chicago, June 20th through 23rd. So hopefully if you have not decided to join after this, you will consider joining because we want to continue this dialogue to ensure that, the voices are being heard, the questions are being asked of people that can provide you some feedback of their experiences so that you don't have, it doesn't make sense to have to reinvent the wheel when you have an opportunity to speak with people that may have already had a similar experience of yours. It's been placed in the chat information regarding the conference. So please feel free to go to the AMAC website and you can become a member. If you're not a member, you can get information about the 37th Annual Business Diversity Conference, again in Chicago, June 20th through 23rd. I thought this would be a perfect way to end Women's History Month for us to have this dialogue. So we purposely identified this date so that we could have this conversation. So the information is being recorded. So if your comments are in the chat, or if you didn't get a chance to ask a question, you'd like to put it in the chat, it will be reviewed with the panelists after the session. So I'm going to stop talking and I'm going to call on Cynthia. Any final remarks that you'd like to share for this particular quarter's event?
Yeah, just one other thing, and it was said a couple of times, but I want to emphasize it a little bit now, is relationships and how important, and this is just a word to all of you, it's just how valuable it is to really develop relationships across the industry. And so it's whether it's with your staff or with other external entities, and with the FAA, with just develop relationships, because you never know when your path might cross again in a different opportunity. And so I want to encourage that, just get to know just different folks in different business entities that you interact with. Definitely encourage just really building a strong relationship over time. It's something that someone told to me, and I believe it's true. It's very, very great for you to be able to do that. And lastly, just thank you again for allowing us to share. And I'm honored just to be here and share what my experience has been, but also to get to know Gladys and Angela and Thella and beyond on the panel with these amazing women.
Thank you. Gladys?
First of all, I want everyone to know I was Cynthia's biggest fan when she got that job. I had my Go Cynthia, Get It Girl shirt. But for everyone out there, I don't care what your age is or how long you're in the industry, like reach out in your community. You have the power of influence in academia and a captive audience from kinder all the way through the continued education, whether it's junior college or community college and four-year universities. I say get them in there, whether you're a consultant or an airport. Have them see what the environment's like, the services that you provide, the industry that you love. And that also helps you like kind of get that revitalization, like you get that moment, like a pavement treatment, you know what I mean? Like you get to see people, wow, and what an airport is. Like Angela said, nobody even knows that it's ran by something. We just think the airline, which they do control all sometimes, but that they are the ones who control the airport, and that's not how it is. And so I say, reach out into your communities. Each of you have a community in which you love. We are all public servants, or else we wouldn't be in this industry. So take that chance and that time, even if you're currently in school today too, be a part of the student chapters, look into the elementary schools, show them what you do. You'd be amazed how much their eyes just open and they see what we do on the consultant services or in an airport. So that's my piece of advice. And also be willing, not just to mentor, but to be mentored. So mentor someone, but also know it's reciprocated all the time. So open people's eyes up. I mean, this is an industry that has lots of options, everything you can think of. And so that's my advice. And keep on trucking. Don't even worry about what people say. It's just a moment. And so whatever they have to say about you, figure it out, self-reflect, always have that self-love, and then keep it moving. Like they cannot determine your retirement. Like, just remember that you're in control of that.
And put on your 4-inch heels and keep it moving.
Get it. Yeah, you need help. Let me know. It does hurt for a little bit. Pain is temporary. I'm just kidding. But
Thella, any closing words?
I'll be brief. At the airport that I was at before I became a director, my director there gave me a book. It was called Leading with Soul. And I really took that book to heart because it talks about leading with your own passion, but also leading with compassion for the people who work for you, because they are really who make you great. So I would just encourage everyone to learn as much about the people who work for you and work with you and around you. Always be on the lookout for how you can make their environment, their world better. and to continue to learn, as someone said earlier. It's an industry where there's always something new, always something to learn. And as a leader, you always want to be learning to make your organization better and to make yourself better. Thank you so much for letting me be a part of this.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Angela, you will close us out.
Well, I would say that this is an excellent time to get into the airport world and to move around up and over in the airport world, because we're in yet another period of change as we deal with I can't call it aftermath, but the math of the pandemic and the changes that are going to come because of it. And minorities and women, any oppressed group anywhere in the world, you get your best opportunity in times of change, in times of anxiety, because they're less concerned about what you look like, and more concerned about what you can do for them to get through the challenges. So this is yet another time to take those opportunities.
Yeah, thank you so much. I just thought about this. Marshall Taggart, if you want to come up and say, as our chair of the ALC, if you'd like to share anything. I know you were driving earlier, but didn't know if you wanted to have a final comment.
Thank you, Karen. I am stationary, and of course, our president spoke as well, and I agree with Ricky. I heard some of the comments. Thank you, Karen, for bringing me up to speed. You ladies were fantastic. This is exactly what we envisioned when we wanted to do the Airport Leadership Collective, having to be able to share these experiences with our members. It is a great pathway. And Karen, you've done a fantastic job.
Thank you.
And don't forget, Karen, we're looking for you one day, right?
Tell it, Marshall.
Okay, I'm just saying.
Angela already got her.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, thank you all for joining us. I hope to see you in
Karen,
Chicago.
wait a minute. I don't know if you have on heels, but the dress is dynamic. You look very nice with your pearls, the gold, and so we can see you.
Oh, this
right
is your
there.
color. This is your color, Marshall.
Oh yeah, I do love that color. Well, again, thanks everybody for attending. Again, this is our opportunity to really celebrate Women's History Month. So congratulations to the phenomenal women on the panel and for all the phenomenal women who are attending this session. That's all I have.
Ricky, anything from you, sir?
Nothing else needs to be said.
Clapping.
Nothing else needs to be said. Outstanding.
All right. Thank you again. I hope to see you all in Chicago in June for the 37th annual Business Diversity Conference, June 20th through 23rd. If you have any additional questions, please add them in the chat and we will make sure they get responded to you. Look out for our next quarter session, which will be after the annual conference in June. And we hope everyone have a safe and enjoyable day. Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye, everybody.
Everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.